Welcome everyone to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings, where in today's video we are going to be continuing Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga Was Born First, Part 6. But as always, if you are a fan of the channel and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Where we last left off in our series, the first 3 matches of the first round of the Chunin exams have taken place. Naruto, Sasuke, and Hanabi have overcome their first round opponents, and now they eagerly await the final match to move on to the second round. But that final match is one that you all are quite familiar with, that being Rock Lee versus Gaara. However, things might be a little different this time around. With this taking place in the finals of the Chunin exams instead of the preliminaries, there's a lot more at stake and a lot more on the line. What new tricks will Rock Lee have in store for his opponent Gaara? And how will this play into effect when Konoha finds itself in dire straits? For all this and more, stay tuned as we now continue Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga Was Born First, Part 6. But, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. As the final match of the first round was set to begin, Lee would stand poised and ready, and Gaara, after witnessing all of the fighting and all of the damage that had been done so far, he was now even more bloodlusted than before. As he charged, the gourd on his back would open to reveal his attacking sand that went launching towards the green shinobi. However, Lee was able to dodge it effortlessly, the two of them playing a dangerous game of fly and the fly swatter, with Lee being the perpetual fly and Gaara the swatter. All the same though, Lee's speed was surprisingly effective, and a few times he had actually managed to get close to Gaara, although his sand acting as the ultimate defense managed to keep him blocked and off guard. All the same, this fight was almost similar to the one from the original. Almost. As Guy, now being able to gauge the situation, would tell Lee much sooner to let him have it. Once he got the confirmation from his sensei, Lee would jump over to the side wall as Gaara looked at him. And just what do you plan on doing? Do you intend to run? No, my friend, but give me a moment, and I will give you the fight that you are looking for. Lee removed his leg warmers and then revealed the ankle weights around both of his legs. Once he had moved the weights and dropped them, the crowd watched as the ground itself shook, as 2 large columns of dust appeared where the weights had been dropped. To see that the boy had been carrying that much on him, and he was still moving as fast as he did, well, now it was time to see what he could really do. Guy would usher for Lee to go forward, and Lee would do just that. You see, the extra month of training did Lee very good. He was able to refine some of his more roughed up sides of his taijutsu, as that was the only thing that he could use. For Naruto, Hanabi, and Sasuke, they felt as though they were watching an actual beast. If he actually made it to the next round, they weren't sure if any of them had what it took to actually outpace him. Lee ran in circles around Gaara looking to make his move. A few tendrils of sand would strike out, but they would all miss, as Lee went charging towards him first. Gaara's sand would strike at Lee, only to see that he had hit an after image. In fact, there were multiple images of Lee all on the battlefield. Secret Art, Hidden Leaf Taijutsu, After Image Barrage. Instantly, multiple Rock Lees would go charging towards Gaara, Gaara attempting to swat away at them, only for them to disappear at the last moment. Was he really moving that fast that he left this many after images? So much so that even the sand itself on command attacked them, even though there was nothing there. He moves so fast, Baki would say, as he stood with Kankuro. So fast that the sand is even being fooled by the after images. Then where's the real one? Gaara looked up as Lee performed a dropping leg strike, hitting him in the face and knocking him to the ground. However, Lee was not done yet. As he charged forward once more, Lee would open the first gate, the front lotus. Instantly, Lee would deliver a devastating kick to Gaara, lifting him high into the air. But realizing that wouldn't be enough, Lee would perform a series of light kicks, kicking him higher and higher, until eventually the bandages wrapped around his arms would remove. Using the dancing leaf shadow, he would bind himself towards Gaara, as the two of them went spinning in a pile driver formation, as he slammed him headfirst into the ground. Lee had closed his eyes for a moment, and it was in that moment that Gaara substituted with a sand clone, only to reappear from a hole in the ground, the very hole that had been made from earlier in the fight. Now with his bloodlust at max, and Lee feeling the effects of using the front lotus, he would temporarily be on the retreat, running for his life, as Gaara, he wanted to crush him. He wanted to grind him into dust. Baki was getting a bit worried. The plan was set to happen with Gaara's match, but it seemed like Gaara was out of control. Baki would yell at Gaara to snap out of it and to focus on the objective. But Gaara, he wanted to have some fun first. Lee continued to dodge over and over again, Guy waiting for the moment where Lee would make his next move. Instantly, Lee, now feeling his second wind, would decide that now was not the time to hold back. As the sand collided with his fist and Gaara had managed to push him, he was looking to wrap him in sand, and he had managed to do so. He crushed his hand as he attempted to use Sand Coffin. However, the sand could not crush Lee. Lee had suspected something like this to happen. He had actually been informed by Kiba after the end of the preliminaries, when Kiba and his team had come into contact with Gaara, when they had saw what he had done to a group of shinobi, and how he used his sand to crush his opponent. The only reason why Kiba gave this warning, even though he didn't know much about Lee, was that even he was filled with some amounts of fear from what he had saw, and he didn't want anyone else to go through that. Lee was thankful for the advice, and as such, he had spent his time cultivating a technique, one that could let him use a defense. He called it the monkey's spirit. Although gorilla would be the much more appropriate term. A burst of green chakra emanating around Lee as Lee looked towards Gaara. The best way to describe this form was like a man-made chakra cloak. It was something that Lee had wanted to do for a while now, although he didn't know if he was capable of doing it. After all, he could not use ninjutsu or genjutsu. The only thing he could use was taijutsu and the molding of his chakra. He could release it, but he couldn't use it in any elemental way. He couldn't create fire or wind or lightning or earth or water. He couldn't use yin or yang release either. No forms of ninjutsu, transformation, genjutsu, none of that would be in his arsenal. The only thing he had was his chakra. But even still, maybe that was all he needed. His very chakra could be his weapon. As such, Lee now had a cloak around him. A green cloak, if you will, of chakra itself. But if one were to look closer, it looked like Lee was inside of a gorilla itself. Or at least the spirit of the gorilla was around him. As Lee looked towards Gaara. This is the fruit of my training. The monkey's cloak. Now, it's time to end this quickly. Lee crossed both of his arms as he began to open the gates. He opened the third gate, the gate of life, followed by the fourth gate, the gate of pain, the fifth gate, the gate of closing. And then, as his skin turned bright red, his green chakra cloak beginning to spike and grow higher around him, he opened the sixth gate, Gate of Joy. At that moment, Gaara would unleash a deluge of sand strikes towards him. However, Lee was prepared for this, as he held both of his fists out and began punching the very air. Sixth gate, Gate of Joy, Morning Peacock technique. Each fist that Lee struck against the air moved at such a high speed and friction that it caused embers of fire to go flying towards Gaara and his sand shrapnels. Gaara having no choice but to put up a sand wall to protect himself, as Lee's arms moved at a rapid pace. Morning Peacock, Sixth Gate, Gate of Joy, Bazooka! Both of Lee's arms continued to rapid fire, as multiple fires of burning ember went shooting towards Gaara, eventually managed to crack against the very sand itself. Once his defenses were broken, Lee would go charging directly towards Gaara, kicking him all around the arena over and over, bouncing off the very air itself. It was something unnatural. Both Baki and Kankuro looked at each other worried. Lee was actually doing damage to Gaara, more so than any of them were expecting. After he had managed to slam Lee, Lee would look on to use his next attack. But before he could, Gaara, as he had landed back on the ground, would encase himself in a sand dome, densifying the sand to its absolute max to make sure it couldn't be broken. He began using the ninjutsu that would awaken Shukaku in that moment, and that was the signal. However, Lee was not going to let him hide so easily. Hiding behind that sand armor, are you? Well, now we'll put it to the test against my own technique. Kakashi looked at Guy and asked what he was preparing to do. Guy looking on seriously, as he knew Lee was preparing to use a new technique he had made. Or at least, one that you all would be familiar with. Lee stood perfectly still across from the sand dome, as he channeled as much chakra into his fist as he could, as he yelled, "Hidden technique! Gorilla's Fist!" At that moment, Lee would go charging with a singular punch, A punch reminiscent of another character from a famed franchise that used the monkey's fist. As Lee went charging, his fist would connect with the sand dome itself, crashing through and smashing Gaara right in the jaw. As he went flying against the wall itself, Baki and Kankuro realized they couldn't wait any longer. Gaara looked as though he had been knocked senseless, and he was barely conscious with blood dripping from his head. From what they heard and from what they saw, he might have had his right arm completely broken, and his left leg might have seemed to have been shattered. Now, in a strange twist of fate, it was Lee who had dealt a devastating blow to the Sand's Jinchuriki, and not the opposite. Lee had no choice but to power down instantly. If he had kept it going for any longer, the effects would have been beyond repair. He could feel his muscles had been torn to shreds, and he felt as though he could barely stand. It was at that moment, however, that the hidden leaf would find itself under attack, as the Konoha Crush would begin. The third Hokage would find himself trapped on the roof, and seeing his opponent would be none other than his former student, one of the legendary Sannin, and Orochimaru. Genma would move to defend Lee, as Baki and Kankuro would arrive. Temari was still recovering from her fight versus Naruto, meaning that Kankuro would be entrusted with getting Gaara to safety, to let him heal up as quickly as possible, and to carry on with the mission. Genma, however, would stand and face against Baki himself, as Kabuto made his emergence as well. In the meantime, Lee wasn't sure of what to do, but it seemed as though there was more at play than just the Chunin exams. Genma asked Lee how you were feeling now. Lee said that it would take a few moments, but he could be up and running. Genma telling Lee to get somewhere safe and recover his strength, and then to chase after Gaara as quickly as possible. Lee, understanding this, would leave off at once. Kakashi and Guy, now seeing the matter unfold, knew that they needed to send some backup for Lee as soon as possible. Thankfully, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hanabi would arrive, and Shikamaru wasn't too far behind either. Although he pretended to be asleep, Hanabi would give him one gentle fist strike to the gut, causing him to wake up. Not all four shinobi were together. Kakashi would summon his ninja hound Paku to lead them towards Lee and to aid him versus Gaara, while Kakashi, Guy, and the other Leaf Shinobi battled against the combined might of the sand and the sound. Now being given their orders, Hanabi would lead the four of them, along with the dog. Using their tracking skills, they were able to see just how far Gaara and Kankuro had gotten, and that Lee wasn't too far behind. But even quickly, they were able to detect the 8 Chunin that were following them from the hidden sound village. Thankfully, with Hanabi and her Byakugan, she could detect that there were 8 of them. However, only 7 of them were going ahead, and there was 1 trailing behind. Shikamaru quickly noting that this was likely a hunt and gathering team, that they would send 7 ahead and 1 would act as the rear, in case the team were compromised in any way. Shikamaru had a plan to deal with them, and he asked Hanabi to stay and help him out. They understood, and Naruto and Sasuke would move on with Paku. Just like in the original, Shikamaru would manage to catch all 7 of the sound Chunin. However, when they called out for their partner to take Shikamaru's head off, he would fall to the ground lifeless, as it was revealed that Hanabi had already dealt with him. With her Byakugan activated and using the lightning style overdrive level 2, she would perform the gentle fist palm strike, knocking them all down instantly. One of them, though, did manage to try to get back up and go in for a last desperate heave. However, Asuma would come through, quickly disposing of them and anyone else that followed, giving Hanabi and Shikamaru a chance to catch up with the others. In the meanwhile, both Naruto and Sasuke had managed to catch up, only to see that Gaara and Kankuro had not gotten as far as they had planned. And now, even Kankuro was fearful, as Gaara started to snap. He had begun to partially transform, his body half monstrous, as it seemed as though the One-Tails was starting to take hold of him. Lee was tired, but still, he was prepared to fight for his village, and Naruto and Sasuke would back him up. Naruto had asked for the two to buy him some time. As he closed his eyes and he focused, he began to draw on the power of the Nine-Tails. Once he had gathered the chakra needed, he would summon up to 1,000 shadow clones, using them to barrage against Gaara, striking him from every location, hitting him repeatedly over and over again. As he used the Uzumaki 1000 strikes, Lee would assist as well, opening up the 8 gates. Up to the 4th gate, he would perform a series of devastating body blows, as well as grabbing Gaara and delivering a devastating suplex onto the ground. And Sasuke, using the Chidori, would cut off Gaara's monstrous sand arm. The group were making progress, definitely, but even still, the monstrous Gaara was not going down, as his entire upper half was now covered and transformed. He used his long, monstrous arms to try to bury the group, but before he could, Hanabi would arrive and use rotation, blocking away all of the sand. As everyone stood on their feet, Gaara would be held in place by Shikamaru with the Shadow Possession Jutsu, although he could feel that by how much force of chakra that Gaara had, and by how much chakra he had left within him, he couldn't hold him for much longer, and that if they were going to take him out, now was the time. All 4 shinobi would charge at Gaara, hoping to launch as many devastating attacks as they could. For Hanabi, she would use her gentle fist, 96 palms, striking away at Gaara with speed and precision. With the power of the lightning style overdrive level 2, her lightning release was able to strike through the sand and damage him. For Lee, he would perform the Leaf Hurricane, as well as using the Front Lotus to knock him into the air once again. Sasuke coming in for the assist, as he used as much of his chakra as he could muster. So much so, that some of the curse mark even forced itself out to aid him with power, as he unleashed a powerful Fire Dragon Jutsu, bombarding him higher into the air once again. And Naruto was waiting for him at the top, with as many shadow clones as he could muster. All of them together would use a combination Wind Style, Great Air Bullet Jutsu, 1K. Multiple air bullets raining down upon Gaara, shooting and blasting off the sand, until he eventually collided into the ground once more. For the group, they thought that they had won, that they had managed to bring him down. But Gaara was not one that would roll over so idly. As the beast still lunged towards them, before Hanabi had a chance to react, she would be knocked against a tree and held in place by the sand that slowly started to crush her. Sasuke attempted to use his last Chidori to try to cut through at Gaara, but even with the aid of the curse mark, it wasn't enough. Lee attempted to use the primary lotus with the relief hurricane. He kicked Gaara's arm, but even he too were sent flying. And then there was Naruto, the one that Gaara wanted to crush. He attempted to bind him in sand and used the sand coffin to destroy him. However, Naruto would use his summoning jutsu, and by luck, he was able to bring out the Chief Toad Gamabunta as Gaara was taken over, and the Sand's one tail, Shukaku, emerged. Much like in the original, Naruto, with aid from the Chief Toad, would manage to bring down Gaara of the One Tails. However, this time with aid from his friends, they would all focus their combination techniques in attempting to keep Gaara from advancing any further, eventually saving Naruto before he crashed to the ground once Gamabunta had been unsummoned and the One Tails had been put back to rest. For Gaara to feel the pain of defeat the way that he had, it was more than he could have expected. He felt that he and Naruto were definitely the same, as the both of them shared the burden of being Jinchuriki. However, Naruto would have even more conviction as he saw how Gaara had his outlook on life, believing that he could not have anyone precious to him. Naruto would rebuke such notions, as Lee, Hanabi, Shikamaru, and Sasuke stood next to him. He showed him that this was the proof of the bonds that he had made in his life, and that for Gaara, he could have the same, if he were willing to reach out. Naruto made it very clear that this fight was not won alone. It was won because they all worked together, and Naruto believed wholeheartedly that he would have never achieved this by himself. Seeing all of them standing together and fighting as one, perhaps this were true, and just maybe Gaara could form these bonds himself. Kankuro would arrive to pick up his brother, as Gaara admitted defeat and left to ponder these things. In the meantime, the Leaf Shinobi would have prevailed. The Konoha Crush would be averted, and victory would be theirs for the taking. Although it still came at a great cost. The third Hokage tragically lost his life in defending the village from Orochimaru. At his funeral, Naruto had taken the loss of the third Hokage greatly, as he had seen him as a parental figure of sorts. Hanabi helping Naruto to cope, and even Sasuke lending him some support, as he understood what it meant to lose someone close to him. All the same, the village would be left recovering, as now a new Hokage needed to be named. Of course, there was the mention of Jiraiya potentially taking the position, but Jiraiya did not feel that this role was something for him. However, if they needed a new Kage, and if it had to be a Sannin, there was one more. The Slug Princess herself, Lady Tsunade. Jiraiya would be more than happy to go and find her for them, but only under one condition, that he could bring Naruto along. Agreeing to his demands, Naruto and Jiraiya would begin their trip, the mission to find Lady Tsunade. Of course, Naruto would have wanted to take Sasuke and Hanabi with him, but Sasuke wanted to stay in the village with Kakashi. And as for Hanabi, leaving the village for non-regulated missions wasn't something she could do so easily. Of course, this was because of her being a part of the Hyuga clan. But that wasn't too bad. The village was still recovering, and right now, she wanted to spend time with her family. That being with her little sister, Hinata. And this would be some good downtime for her. Naruto, accepting this, would watch as the two of them see him off as he left from the village with Jiraiya. However, in the distance, there would be two other figures who would be making their way into the village as well. Both distinct as they wore dark black cloaks with red clouds. One with a sword that was wrapped in bandage, and the other, a boy with dark black hair and piercing red eyes. For the boy, he felt nostalgic. This was a place that he once called home. But this was not a reunion. This duo had come for a specific reason and purpose. To fulfill their mission and to claim the fourth Hokage's legacy. This concludes Naruto Polaris. What if Hanabi Hyuga was born first? Part 6. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Naruto Tale of Two Sages. What if Naruto was Luis's familiar? Part 4. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.